philosophizing on the philosophy of the psychological mind, and in particularly the philosophy of psychology and the philosophy of mind, body, and environment, and understanding the relationship between the philosophy of mind to both the philosophy of direct perceptions, but also the philosophy of psychology. And I want to be discussing optimistic luck orientation, which pertains to these individual differences that I self-instantiate and which are an optimum onto my existence and which are validated through my existence. Because optimism as a individually different trait orients us in a forward-looking, but not just looking, locomotion direction with a sense of innate directionality that is related to the neurotransmission of neuroepinephrine, epinephrine, serotonin, acetylcholine, as well as dopamine and gamma-buteic amino acids that are all neurotransmitters important for pretty much everything we do on a daily basis and involve these chemical compounding, protein synthesizing, as well as are often operational in parallel and in a similar operating constitution to brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is a hormone directly important for the maintenance and development of the nervous system and the sustainability of the self from the cellular automata level, which each cell, you can think of it, though it's not quite accurate, has a sense of self, but it's more like it models a sense of self, and it's oriented towards generally a positive course for the future and the sustainability for the surrounds, which is distinct from ourselves, which is interested in the continuity and the finitude of our own existence, but also what makes life great and our experiences great and the quality of what's great, the qualia of great and the qualia of good. And the quality of good tends to expand the mind and propel us towards what energizes us through energizers in our metabolism, which innately and intrinsically are energizers and fuel sources that fuel emotion, negative emotions and positive emotions. And even the negative emotions tend to have dormant positivities and potentials in them that if we explore them, we can tap into not just what pangs us, but what pangs us in goodening ways that aren't necessarily good, that do have these negative ill-qualias, but which we can put a positive flavoring to and transform them in these dynamical ways through the neuromodulations of our nervous system and understanding of how our direct perceptions influence our mind and body through these psychophysiological interactions and relationships that are operating in these triadic, reciprocally dynamical causal ways that involve this consciousness perception operating in relation to action and behavior within a surrounding environment that forms these meaningful constituencies that can have these positive ripple effects on our being through our self-virtuousness that involves our strengths and developing a deeper understanding of our strengths and the positive qualities within various experiences within our life, not just the positive qualities, what it's like to experience a high point or something that is really meaningful to us as individuals. And that often comes through tapping into our individual strengths, whether it start from our interests and we become curious and explore something that tends to matter not just to ourselves, but has a matter-of-fact impact on our surrounds, and a positive one that exemplifies a meaningful sense of virtue. And there are other strengths too, such as courage to do something difficult that might prior to doing it stress you out and make you start to feel all these negative feely wheelies. negative feely-wheelies that are associated with these negative emotions and negative affects and ill qualities of feeling. But when we explore those pangs, there's a lot of meaning and depth to them that has knowledge. And there's also a lot of positivity to be found there. Because, when sometimes we search in those places that psychologically distress us, there are optimums to be found there and dormant wisdoms to be found, like in the virtues of resiliency or the virtues of self-efficacy or forward-lookingness that is direct to this optimistic luck orientation. Because you see, optimistic luck orientation involves looking towards the grandeurs within our direct visual grasping of things and what we can do in each moment, in our direct moments and now in these instantive cases, through simply recognizing where the positive quality is to be found or where we can next source it or resource it. And sometimes that means engaging with these negative emotions that still energize us and provide us with fuel sources or the next map to what will lead to more of these meaningful, more meaning, as in more meaningfulness in qualia of experience and direction that is innervating of these neuroplastic learning plasticities that start with our direct perceptions and which are positively shaped by the optimums that we endow through our self-instantiations of the coursings of our noggins in relation to our voluntary thought processes, but also our non-voluntary thought processes that pertain to our volitions and our conscience, our consciousness, and our consciousness in terms of thinking and thinking deeply on the objective truths of our character, our strengths, and our virtue, and how that exemplifies something of true merit and a subjective objective truth that pertains directly to psychological transmissions and neurotransmissions that have both of these parallelisms of psychological and neurological information that span the electrical pulses of our nervous systems, involving these sodium ion channels that really do metabolize these various resources that are meaningful, and through our direct consumptions we can savory, flavory the qualities of the qualia that taste good to us and provide us a great feeling of affect, a positive affect. So even when you're feeling a little bit bitter or down or sour, sometimes just churning to the food that you like most, like a ice cream cone, and licking that savory, flavory thing up and really enjoying the flavors, you're instantiating a lot of meaning through the tastiness of that thing. And you're also learning how to regulate a lot of negativity with that. And in some cases, even you can begin to tap into your strengths simply by just putting a tongue to that sugary, dairy, savory thing, and which is sweet and milky and has a creamery sort of connotation to it that I like to sometimes put in my coffee, because it not just tastes good, it feels good, and it resonates with these engaging emotions of my interests, and which allowed me to explore the world in these magnifying, awesomely awesome, virtue expanding and thought exemplifying the knowledge of great thinkers that produce wells of goods and goodening exemplifications of what is coming down the pipeline in terms of what we should stick around for, what we might want to stick around for, and sustain our psychological sustainability, because there is a lot of things within our own direct experiences that we can look at every day that's positive and constructive and contributes a deepening sense of worth and value. A value that's not just, say, monetary, but value that is embedded within these metabolisms and provide us with an appreciative sense of meaning and an appreciative sense of worth and meaning through our self-virtues. And when we engage with the optimums and these positive qualities of our direct experiences, there are some individuals who tend to do this at a higher frequency and who engage with it more deeply and who are always learning, constantly learning, and because they want to, volitionally, and because it feels great. And I like to learn and I like to optimize my learning, and I engage positively in learning, and I would say it's probably the most meaningful, endeavoring thing I've ever done and continue to do, and which I do on a daily basis and won't stop, because that's part of what I think it means to be a human being, but also an exemplary individual, to engage in this learning process, a lifelong learning process that is positively oriented and done in a good conscience, and is seeking to expand that conscience towards meaningful grandeurs. And the next dawns at a rising sunset that set forth the table, which will have a good meal and eat some food and good darn food, and with some coffee and maybe some bacon and eggs, that wake the mind, not just wake it, awaken the mind to its potential and grander possibilities by setting forth through hopefulness in our coursings that is initialized by our optimisms and our forth-looking movements and instantiations from our noggins that are direct to these learning experiences, and which can begin every day with something that we eat at breakfast. Maybe it's a bowl of ice cream. But whatever it is, if we eat some food and a food that we enjoy, sometimes that's enough to lay the fodder that provides us and supplies us with the psychological energy to keep on keeping on and moving towards what is not just meaningful, but what's matterful and purposeful, and which provides a net positive and optimums onto our existence that ultimately tend to proliferate greater positivity, in which through our sustainers, our self-sustainers, and our self-stimulators, but also our optimistic optimizers, we tend to maintain these grandeurs of positive psychological well-being through how we engage the quality of our experience, but not just the quality of our experience, directly engage our surrounds, and how we can really set ourselves up for positivity if we just keep a thoughtful mind to it and mind it with a hand and stick that allows us to really grasp things and form these knowledgeable representative categories of existence that pertain to these really true objective truths that are direct to our subjective experiences. Say, not necessarily just I, but because, like, I am I, and you are you, and you are not I, but I am also not you, as in you as I, but not I as in you. And making that distinction, we can recognize our individual differences and also recognize where positivity is to be found in others and the good is to be found in others through a good conscience. And doing so provides us access to information that we would not otherwise have through individual differences. And we can learn to appreciate things in our surrounds more. And this helps us to engage in life more through not necessarily interactions with others, but interactions with information, psychological information, direct nervous transmissions that are associated with the affects and the guiding orientations that are meaningful to us and which deepen our sense of self-direction in the world and increase the amount of freedom through enabling an understanding and a cognizance of this innate agency and innovative capacity that's broadened through optimistic luck orientation that involves lifelong learning and engagement in learning and optimal learning experiences But not just optimal learning experiences, seeking out optimal learning experiences and how to learn better and how to get the most of a education through our ways of learning, our self-directed ways of learning, and broadening the ways of learning, and knowing how to know, often through the self and self-knowledge that is always going to be something that's going to produce at some point along the future a positivity, because we're sharpening our minds and we always have our minds and we engage in the world through our minds. So if we start to look towards the good and the positive and we act in these good or conscious ways, we really start to shape not just our minds but our bodies and environment in relation to that positive energy through our positive energizers and our optimistic optimizers that really are a soul onto the environment and can exemplify the virtues of not just ourselves but great thinkers through our self-virtuousness. So I hope you enjoy this video. Have a good one. Bye.